Your grapevines are covered in beautiful, lush leaves. They're growing like crazy. They look healthy and vigorous, but when harvest will come, maybe a handful of small, sad grape clusters. Or worse, nothing at all. Sound familiar? Here's the truth most grape growers never learn. If your vine is producing tons of leaves but few grapes, you're doing one of 7 critical things wrong. And I'm going to tell you exactly what those 7 mistakes are, and more importantly, how to fix them, so your vines produce heavy clusters of grapes year after year. I've been growing grapes in California for over a decade, and I've made every single one of these mistakes. Now, my vines produce 20 to 30 pounds per plant consistently. Let's get your vines fruiting instead of just growing leaves. Before we start, let me explain something important about grapevines. Grapes are not like tomatoes or peppers. You can't just plant them, water them, and expect heavy harvests. Grapevines are woody perennials that need specific management to produce fruit. Without that management, they'll happily grow leaves forever and give you almost nothing to harvest. The 7 mistakes I'm covering today are the exact reasons most home gardeners get disappointing grape harvests. 1. Wrong pruning or no pruning at all. 2. Over-fertilizing, especially with nitrogen. 3. Planting the wrong variety for your climate. 4. Not enough sunlight reaching the fruiting zone. 5. Watering incorrectly during critical stages. 6. Young vines that aren't mature enough yet. 7. Not understanding how grapes produce fruit. If you find this helpful, hit that subscribe button. I post videos every week about practical fruit growing that works. Let's start with the biggest mistake first. The number 1 reason grapevines produce leaves instead of grapes is incorrect pruning, or worse, no pruning at all. Here's what you need to understand. Grapes produce fruit on 1-year-old wood. That means this year's grapes grow on canes that grew last year. If you don't prune, your vine keeps all the old wood, all the new wood, everything. The vine puts all its energy into maintaining that massive amount of growth instead of producing fruit. You end up with a tangled jungle of leaves and very few grapes. So here's what you need to do. Winter pruning, the foundation. Prune grapes in late winter when the vine is dormant, usually January through early March, depending on your climate. For most home gardeners, I recommend cane pruning. Here's how it works. Select 2 to 4 strong canes from last year's growth. These should be pencil thick, about 6 to 10 feet long, and have good bud spacing. Cut everything else off. Yes, everything. You're removing 90% of the vine. I know it feels brutal, but this is critical. Those selected canes are where this year's fruit will grow. Tie the canes horizontally along your trellis wire. Horizontal positioning encourages even bud break and fruiting along the entire cane. Each cane should have 10 to 15 buds. Count them. More buds don't mean more grapes. They mean competition and smaller clusters. Summer pruning, managing growth. In summer, your vine will push out tons of new shots. This is where most people lose control. Here's what to do. Remove any shots growing from the main trunk below your fruiting canes. These suckers steal energy from fruit production. Thin shoots on your fruiting canes to 1 every 4 to 6 inches. If shoots are crowded, they compete and produce smaller clusters. Once shoots have grown about 12 to 18 inches past the top wire, pinch them back. This redirects energy from vegetative growth into the developing grape clusters. Remove any shoots that aren't producing fruit clusters. These are just leaf factories consuming resources. The critical rule: be aggressive. Most home gardeners are too timid with pruning. They're afraid they'll hurt the vine. But here's the truth. An unpruned grapevine will produce leaves indefinitely and almost no fruit. A properly pruned vine might look stark and bare in winter, but it explodes with fruit in summer. I prune away 90% of my vine's growth every winter. My neighbors think I'm killing it. Then summer comes, and I'm harvesting 25 to 30 pounds per vine, while theirs produce a few scattered clusters. Aggressive pruning is the single most important thing you can do for grape production. Pruning, red flag signs. If your vine has dozens of thin, wispy canes, you're not pruning enough. If you can't see through your vine because the canopy is so thick, you're not pruning enough. If your grape clusters are tiny and sparse, even though the vine is huge, you're not pruning enough. The goal is a clean, open canopy where every cluster gets sunlight and air circulation. That only happens through aggressive annual pruning. The second biggest mistake is over-fertilizing, especially with nitrogen. Here's what happens. Nitrogen promotes vegetative growth. That means leaves, shoots, and canes. When you give grapevines too much nitrogen, they put all their energy into growing bigger, lusher, greener leaves. Fruit production suffers massively. I see this constantly with home gardeners who fertilize their grapes the same way they fertilize their tomatoes or vegetables. That's a huge mistake. What grapes actually need. Grapevines are light feeders compared to annual vegetables. They don't need much fertilizer at all. Established vines in decent soil often need zero fertilizer beyond an annual layer of compost. If you do fertilize, use a balanced fertilizer with low nitrogen. Look for an NPK ratio like 5-10-10 or even 0-10-10. Apply fertilizer only once per year in early spring before bud break. That's it. How to tell if you're over-fertilizing. Your vines are producing tons of lush, dark green growth. Shoots grow extremely long, 8, 10, 12 feet or more. The canes are thick and vigorous, but fruit clusters are small, sparse, or non-existent. That's classic nitrogen excess. The fix. Stop fertilizing entirely for 1 year. Let the vine use up the stored nitrogen. In following years, apply compost only, no synthetic fertilizers. Compost releases nutrients slowly and won't spike nitrogen levels. If your soil is truly poor, use a low nitrogen fertilizer sparingly. A handful per vine is plenty. The phosphorus and potassium difference. While nitrogen promotes leaves, phosphorus and potassium promote flowering and fruiting. If you must fertilize, choose a product high in phosphorus, the middle number, and potassium, the last number. These nutrients support fruit development without causing excessive vegetative growth. My personal approach. I apply a 2-inch layer of compost around each vine in early spring. That's it. No synthetic fertilizers, no amendments, nothing else. My vines produce heavily every single year. If your soil is decent and you're pruning correctly, your vines don't need much feeding at all. Remember, grapes are fruiting plants, not leafy greens. Treat them accordingly. Less is more when it comes to fertilizing grapes. The third mistake is planting grape varieties that aren't suited to your climate. Grapes are incredibly climate-specific. A variety that produces abundantly in California might fail completely in Michigan, and vice versa. Chill hours matter. Many grape varieties need a certain number of chill hours below 45 degrees during winter dormancy. If you live in a warm climate and plant a variety that needs 800 chill hours, it won't fruit properly. The buds won't break evenly and production will be sporadic. Conversely, if you live in a cold climate and plant a low-chill variety, late spring frosts will damage emerging buds and kill your crop. Heat requirements. Some grapes need long, hot summers to ripen properly. Others can't handle intense heat and sunburn easily. European wine grapes, Vitis vinifera, like Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, need warm, dry summers. Plant them in humid, rainy climates, and they'll struggle with fungal diseases. American grapes like Concord and Catawba handle humidity and cold much better, but don't produce well in dry, hot climates. Know your climate. Before buying grapevines, research what grows successfully in your area. Contact your local agricultural extension office. They can tell you exactly which varieties thrive in your region. Talk to other grape growers nearby. What's producing well for them? Don't plant what you like to eat or drink. Plant what will grow and fruit in your climate. Common variety recommendations. Hot, dry climates, California, Arizona, southern regions. Flame seedless, Thompson seedless, red globe, crimson seedless. Moderate climates, Pacific Northwest, Mid-Atlantic. Himrod, seedless white. Canadas, seedless red. Concord, seeded, cold hardy. Cold climates, northern states, Canada. Concord, extremely cold hardy. Valiant, survives to 50 degrees. Frontenac, wine grape, very cold hardy. Humid climates, southeast, Gulf Coast. Muscadine varieties, Carlos, Noble, Scuppernong. These are specifically adapted to heat and humidity. My experience. I tried growing Concord grapes in California. They struggled in the heat and dry conditions. Production was terrible. I switched to flame seedless and Thompson seedless varieties bred for California conditions. Now production is excellent. Plant the right variety for your climate, and you've solved half your problems before they start. The fourth mistake is not providing enough sunlight to the fruiting zone. Grapes need 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight daily. But here's the critical part. The clusters themselves need sunlight, not just the leaves. The shading problem. Even if your vine is in full sun, the clusters might be completely shaded by leaves. Thick, dense canopies block light from reaching the developing fruit. The clusters stay small, ripen slowly, and often develop poor flavor. Birds and insects love shaded clusters because they're hidden and protected. The solution: leaf thinning. In midsummer, after fruit has set, remove leaves directly around the grape clusters. Strip away 4 to 6 leaves around each cluster on the morning sun side of the vine. This exposes the grapes to light without removing so much foliage that you stress the vine. Don't remove all the leaves, just those immediately shading the fruit. This practice is called leaf pulling, and it's standard in commercial vineyards. Benefits of exposed clusters: better ripening. Sunlight triggers sugar development, improved flavor. Grapes develop more complex taste. Reduced disease. Air circulation prevents mold and mildew. Fewer pests. Birds and insects prefer hidden clusters. Easier monitoring. You can see when grapes are ripe, when to do this. Wait until clusters have set fruit and grapes are about pea-sized, usually June or July depending on your climate. If you expose clusters too early, you risk sunburn. Wait until fruit is some size. Remove leaves on the morning sun side only. Leave afternoon sun leaves for some protection in hot climates. My approach. Every July, I walk through my vineyard and remove leaves around each cluster. It takes about 30 minutes for 12 vines. The difference is dramatic. Clusters exposed to sunlight ripen 2 weeks earlier and taste significantly sweeter. If your vines have dense canopies and poor fruit production, leaf thinning might be the simple fix you need. Quick reminder: if you're finding this helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps more fruit growers discover this information, and I post new videos every week about growing fruit that produces. All right, let's keep going. The fifth mistake is watering incorrectly during critical growth stages. Grapes have specific water needs at different times of year. Water too much or too little at the wrong time, and fruit production suffers. Early season, moderate water. From bud break through flowering, spring, grapes need consistent moisture. This is when shoots are growing and flower clusters are developing. Drought stress during this period reduces the number of flowers, and therefore the number of grapes. Water deeply once a week if it doesn't rain. Fruit set, critical period. Right after flowering, when tiny grapes are forming, water is critical. Drought stress during fruit set causes shattering, where developing berries fall off the cluster. You'll end up with sparse, gappy clusters instead of full, tight ones. Keep soil consistently moist, not waterlogged, during this 3 to 4 week period. Mid to late summer, reduce water. Here's where most people get it wrong. Once grapes reach full size and start ripening, called veraison, when grapes change color, you need to reduce watering significantly. Excess water during ripening dilutes flavor, reduces sugar concentration, and can cause berries to split. In late summer, I water my grapes only once every 2 to 3 weeks, and only if there's no rain. Some commercial vineyards stop watering entirely 4 to 6 weeks before harvest. The signs of incorrect watering: too much water, split or cracked berries, watery, bland flavor, excessive vegetative growth, soft, mushy fruit. Too little water, shriveled, raisin-like grapes, severe leaf yellowing or drop, stunted growth, sparse clusters. My watering schedule: spring, April, May, weekly deep watering. Early summer, June. Weekly watering through fruit set midsummer, July. Every 10 days, late summer, August, September. Every 2 to 3 weeks, or not at all. This schedule produces firm, sweet, flavorful grapes consistently. Adjust based on your climate and soil type, but the principle remains: consistent water early in the season, reduced water as harvest approaches. Water is the easiest factor to control, and it has a huge impact on fruit quality and quantity. The sixth mistake is expecting heavy production from young vines. This isn't really a mistake, it's more about managing expectations. But it's worth discussing because impatient gardeners often think something's wrong when their young vines don't produce much. Grapevine maturity. Timeline. Year 1. Plant the vine. Remove any fruit clusters that form. Force all energy into root and structure development. Year 2. Allow a few small clusters, maybe 2 to 4 per vine, still focusing on vegetative growth. Year 3. First moderate harvest. You might get 5 to 10 pounds per bowl if everything goes well. Year 4 and beyond. Full production. Mature vines can produce 20 to 30 plus pounds annually. Why young vines don't produce much. Grapevines need extensive root systems to support heavy fruit loads. Young vines simply don't have the root capacity to feed dozens of grape clusters. If you let them try, the clusters will be small and the vine will be stressed. It's better to sacrifice early production to build a strong vine that will produce heavily for 20 to 30 years. What to do? Be patient. Let your vine establish itself properly. In years 1 and 2, remove most or all fruit. I know it's hard, but it's worth it. Focus on training the vine structure correctly: good trunk, good permanent arms, good trellis attachment. By year 4, you'll have a powerhouse vine that produces abundantly every year. Don't confuse youth with problems. If your vine is 1 to 3 years old and not producing much, that's completely normal. Don't over-fertilize trying to force production. Don't over-prune trying to stimulate fruiting. Just maintain the vine properly and let it mature naturally. By year 4 or 5, if production is still poor, then look at the other 6 mistakes in this video. But if your vine is young, just give it time. The 7th mistake is not understanding how grapes produce fruit. This is the foundation everything else builds on. If you don't understand this, you'll keep making the same mistakes. Grapes. Fruit on 1-year-old wood. this is critical. This year's grapes grow on canes that grew last year. The canes growing right now this season will produce fruit next year. This means your pruning and management decisions this year affect next year's harvest. Where fruit comes from. Each bud on last year's canes contains embryonic flower clusters. When that bud breaks open in spring, it produces a shoot. That shoot carries the flower clusters that will become grapes. Not every bud produces fruit. Typically, buds 3 to 10 from the base of the cane are the most fruitful. Buds near the base, positions 1 to 2, usually produce only leaves. Buds at the very tip are weak and produce small clusters or nothing. Why this matters for pruning. When you select cane during winter pruning, you're selecting where next year's fruit will come from. If you select weak, thin canes, you'll get poor fruit production. If you select thick, vigorous canes with well-spaced buds, you'll get excellent production. If you don't prune at all and keep all the old wood, the vine produces hundreds of weak shoots with tiny clusters or no clusters at all. The 2-year cycle. Understanding this 2-year cycle is key. Year 1, vine grows canes. Year 2, those canes produce fruit. When you prune in winter, you're managing both years simultaneously. Removing old wood that already fruited, selecting new wood that will fruit next season, leaving some growth to become fruiting wood the following year. The aha moment. Once this concept clicks, everything else makes sense. You understand why aggressive pruning works. You understand why nitrogen fertilizer is bad. It produces vegetative growth this year that won't fruit well next year. You understand why young vines don't produce. They haven't developed enough quality wood yet. Master this concept, and grape growing becomes straightforward. So let's recap the 7 mistakes that cause grapevines to produce leaves instead of grapes. 1. Incorrect or insufficient pruning. Prune aggressively every winter. Remove 90% growth. Keep only 2 to 4 strong canes with 10 to 15 buds each. 2. Over-fertilizing with nitrogen. Use compost only, or a low nitrogen fertilizer very sparingly. Grapes are light feeders. 3. Wrong variety for your climate. Research what grows successfully in your region before buying. Don't plant what you like, plant what will produce. 4. Insufficient sunlight on clusters. Thin leaves around developing fruit in mid-summer to expose clusters to light. 5. Incorrect watering timing. Water consistently through fruit set, then reduce dramatically as harvest approaches. 6. Expecting too much from young vines. Be patient. Full production doesn't start until year 4 or 5. 7. Not understanding fruiting biology. This year's grapes grow on last year's wood. Manage your vine with that 2-year cycle in mind. Fix these 7 mistakes, and your grapevine will shift from producing mostly leaves to producing heavy, abundant clusters year after year. My vines now give me 25 to 30 pounds per plant consistently. Yours can too. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more fruit-growing content that works. Drop a comment below and let me know. Which of these 7 mistakes have you been making? And what's your biggest challenge with growing grapes? I read and reply to every comment. Thanks for watching, and here's to endless grape harvests.